Well, no mic today, but I've got the old Alfred Herbert drill all set up. I've got him plugged in. That's a variable frequency drive. I put on the 3-phase, and I've got it running on about 450 RPM, but I can dial that in and out with the variable frequency drive. And then the cylinder here, I've got that on a bit of wood. I've just tidied up, make sure there's no humps or bumps or anything, and I'll bring the drill down through the hole there and see. So I'll try and get the camera set up where you can see, and we'll go from there. Okay, I'll crank this variable frequency drive up. We're on the end there. I've got a drill that's not all that sharp, which is what I wanted. See the wood there. I'll try and not much there, but I've got a heap of shadow here, so okay, you can feel that's gone through. Bolts go through, they're not slopping around. It's even firm, that one, so that's good. Probably just needs a clean out. But now, when the bolts go through, you can see on that side it's just touching a little bit, and on this side here so I'm just going to put this on the belt sander and just take a little bit off the flat there, and I'll come back in a minute. Well, there you go, all in there. I'll back away a bit. You can see there's not that pretty. I've got a little bit of movement there. The bolts are firm in the hole, so yeah, look, I'm calling that good. I'm pretty pleased with that. That one's a bit firmer. Not a real pretty grind on the side here because the housing pops out and that, but it's certainly going to be strong enough to do the job. And that one there needs a bit of a tap in with the David Brown stabiliser bracket. Okay, that's the holes drilled. We'll go over and we'll look at assembling this rock shaft together, eh? Okay, this morning we're going to start putting this hydraulic lift cover together, and earlier in the piece we actually put the shafts and that in, and we got all that sorted out. But we have to deal with the draft link and associated parts there. I'll shift that around a bit just so we can see. And if you recall on disassembly, mine was all rusted out. That's a tin cover still stuck there. You can't see any lip on it. That was part of one of these, you know, the guide for the spring, and this main plate should look something like that, you know, with a lip to keep the dirt and that out. So my draft link rod was bent. I've straightened that pretty well. Look, it's not 100%, but it's going to be okay. It only sort of pushes and pulls a little bit, and so we're sort of comfortable with that. Not too worried about any of that. But I thought I'd have a bit of a chat about how it works and where I'm getting the parts and all that sort of thing. So we're going to use our old yoke here. There's nothing wrong with that. The thread seems good. the rod here goes in quite a long way. I believe I should be able to get my adjustment with that all right. So we're going to go with that, and that all pokes in here and hooks up to the yoke. So the yoke on the fork actually comes in here, and this pushes and pulls that, and of course you know that when it pushes and pulls that, it moves the control valve on the tractor. So okay, I've had a bit of a shift of the whole show and the camera and everything, so we'll just see how we go here. Okay, I found a split pin, so we're going to pull that in, spread his legs, there you go. Nip them off. And bring that through like that. So we shouldn't have to worry about that. Now if I hold it up that way, surely I'd have a bit of wood here. Excuse my dial. We can hold it up there so you can sort of see a bit better. I'm working sideways, I'm back over here, and yeah, just see how we go. That may be better. Oh, I don't know. I'm just trying to keep out of the video, really. Okay, so what we can do now is bring this fella over here. Now, that doesn't have a gasket or anything that I've ever known about. And we have the bolts to pull it in. Maybe a bit of never sees there. A lot of these bolts, if you have a real good look at them, there's a tiny bit of yellow. Looks like that glue that they use for galvanic corrosion may have been used in a lot more places. Now, something I've never thought about even looking at is, oh yeah, they're through holes all the way through. So possibly I should have put some Loctite sealer on, that's why the glue's on. But anyway, we'll just soldier on. Now I want to make sure that this sits in there like it should. That sits in there like it should. We'll bring that up like that. And we'll just put a bit of tension on these bolts. So I want to see as I do them up, will the tin cover come down without distorting greatly. Just not what I like to do. Okay, spring goes on. Yoke goes on. You know what Lance didn't do? Didn't put some never sees on there. The amount of times these threads are bloody seized on and you've actually got to cut through here to get these off. You know, I was actually surprised when I could actually unscrew this one. Okay, so we'll take this up. Now, in the book, adjusting this spring is actually something you do on the tractor later. You have a bit of weight on the arms and you check for movement. You know, with the weight on the arms, you check that there's no gap in here. It's important for the draft control to work properly that there's no slop in this spring. Like when the tractor's just sitting there, there's got to be no slop. So what I might do at this stage, I'll just take that up. Couple of turns. Now something to explain to you. Is that sitting nice and true? Yep. Something to explain to you is for heavy drafting, you know, if your implement keeps riding out when you'd like it to stay in a bit longer, as long as you have traction, you can tighten this up a little bit. So there's a bit of tension on this spring, so when the top link pushes in there, it's harder for it to push, of course. And you have a lot of people say, oh, I'm just driving along, my hydraulics just pop up instantly. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Have a look at this. Have a look at there's no movement there. So with your implement on, say with an implement on, just a carryall, a link box or something like that, that doesn't weigh a lot, if you've got a gap in here, well, that means all this is pulled this way. So if you hit a bump or something like that, and it puts force back in this way, well, of course you're going to adjust your hydraulics, aren't you? So it might raise up. And then once it's raised up, because there's movement here, it goes clunk and drops back down, and the implement's all over the place. So it is important to take note to put a little bit of load on this. So, but I've had it 2 turns. Oh, actually, I had it 1 turn, 2 of them. So now I'll go 2. And that's probably too much, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at this stage. That's an adjustment that we do on the tractor a little bit later on. So that's all we can do around there. We've ballsed that up enough. But anyway, that's how it is today. I'd just like to give that a bit of a turn. Make sure this is nice and free. So that fella there, he sits and does all the, that fork, he does all the work. So, okay, what next? I'm going to put the donkey dick in. So it goes in your lift cylinder there. So I'll slide that in now, pop the pin in. And even if you got your hydraulics just apart, and have a look around all your little split pins. That one didn't quite bend how I'd like it to, but anyway, doesn't matter. And look, if they're looking a bit worn at all, get rid of them. It's a bloody split pin, you know, it won't break the bank. Take that off. Take that off. So we'll pop that out of the way. Now when we put the cylinder in, we've got a couple of sliders to line up here, and on the lift cylinder at the back here, there's a couple of holes, and these holes here, these rods there go in. Now I've put the piston in. I did that the other night. I thought I had enough to get going with, but I certainly didn't. So I'll just slide these bolts out for the moment. And we've got the O-ring in. It's important to keep an eye out for that. Put the donkey doodle in. Then line that one up there, this one up here, that one falls out again. Drop a bolt in there, drop a bolt in there. Now these bolts, these are the ones I ground down, so they should be, once you line the hole up, they should be a firm fit. And when you read the book, it says about these front ones being a dowel, and they are, and mine are. So we'll just pop a couple of nuts on those fellas. Now the book said the only tension I could find for these in the book was that with the 7/16 studs you do the nuts up underneath to 60 foot-pounds. I'll just try and get one started here. But then they upgraded to the 1/2 inch bolts for the front two, and the front two are dowels too. You know, they've made them as dowels. So I'll just try and hold this back and hold all the bolts in as we go. So these back bolts are 60. A 1/2 inch stud, if it was a head stud, something like that, you do them 90 to 100. So the front ones here, I'd probably do to 80 pounds, something like that. It's up to you, but I could not find a tension. I could find in the book where it said it's serial number such and such, they changed the bolts, but I could not find in there where it said the new tension for these front ones. So I believe 60 is probably not enough. It was a head stud, like I say, 90 to 100 for a 1/2 inch UNF bolt. So up to you what you decide to do with that. I'm not even going to tension them. I'm just going to put my long ring spanner on and give them a bit of a nip up, and that'll be good enough for Lance today. You take them up until your elbow clicks. These ones clicks once, these ones clicks twice, eh? Just sort of. So. Okay, that's nice and tight. If I do put a tension wrench on it, it won't be now, it'll be later when I've got the lift cover in place. Lovely, tell your mum. Okay. Now, come over here. Now there should be a spring. Now what have I done with that spring? Stop looking. No, I found it. Stop looking. You're good. That goes in there. And remember the little hole. I'm having trouble keeping in frame today. Yeah, remember the little hole that we drilled in the cast here to help the spring? That's how that works. So if we bring that right over to this near the edge of the bench without dropping it off, we can slide this lift lever in, and we can do adjustments with that later on. Put the lever to the back and you don't have the tension on it, so you can see why. Put the lever to the front, you can see the tension coming up, so put the lever to the raised position. And that there, that's still working nicely, it's all glued in nicely. That there we have to adjust later, so it adjusts back and forth along there to get a lift in, or you know, to get it to work correctly. And look, just at this stage, I'm not going to put that in. You can and lift the whole thing on together. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to try and sit this lift cover back on now, hook up the fork, and away we go. And some of the reason I'm not is that we actually have a Fergie positioner kit we're going to fit on this tractor, and that involves buggering around here a little bit. So I think what I'll do is I'll fit this top cover, I'll put this in as it would be normally and run through the adjustments just so we know it's adjusted correctly and the tractor's working fine. And then later on we'll pull the quadrant and that off again, and we'll fit this Fergie positioner and we'll just see how well that works. I'm sure it works fine. They've sold heaps of them. So anyway, that might do for this video. I'll sit this on. You probably don't need to see me heave me guts up, bloody heave-hoeing this on. And yeah, I'll put the gasket on the housing. I'll lift this in place, and I have to remember to, on the fork here now, if I lift you up a little bit, there we go. On this fork here, the control valve has to go there, and then I've got to put the alloy block in here that stops these from flexing. That's the idea of that. So an interesting thing, as I saw the other day, or in the workshop manual just yesterday, there's actually a Ferguson tool that spreads these legs. And yeah, you put it in and you put this lift cover and the legs are all spread so you can get the valve in, where normally, you know, you heave-ho a little bit to do that. So that's just an interesting thing. But next time you see this lift cover, it will be on the tractor and we'll start fiddling. I've still got to do the PDO yet before we can put oil in, but once I get most of the tractor assembled, we'll be good.